Welcome to the Future of Medicine podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Aaron Wenzel. This series of the show is called The Cost of Success. It's a look behind the curtain of the lives of people who build, lead, and create the most interesting things at the highest level. We talk about what they've made, but more importantly, we talk about what it costs them. The pace, the pressure, the trade-offs, the sacrifices, and the scars. These are the same conversations I have with leaders I care for every day at Brentwood MD. Because success not only leaves clues, it leaves a mark. And learning to carry it well is the real work. There are leaders who build things, and there are leaders who carry people. Today, I'm sitting down with somebody who does both. Pastor Darren Whitehead founded Church of the City, a community that has become a spiritual home for thousands across Nashville. Behind the sermons and the growth and the influence, there's a weight he carries that few will ever understand. The responsibility of shepherding a city, the hidden emotional cost of leadership, the toll it takes on a body that's expected to stay strong while holding everyone else's pain. Today, Darren opens up about that journey, the sacrifices and the scars, what he gained and what it cost him to build something that matters. This is The Cost of Success with Pastor Darren Whitehead. Hey everybody, welcome to this first episode of the Future of Medicine podcast, the Cost of Success episode series. My first guest is Pastor Darren Whitehead. He's originally from Australia. Darren has lived in the United States for over 27 years. In 2013, he founded Church of the City, now with 4 locations in Nashville, Tennessee. He earned his master's in ministry from Wesley Seminary and his doctorate from Capital Seminary and Graduate School, with his dissertation focus on millennials and the future of the Western Church. Darren recently released his 3rd book, The Digital Fast: Detox Your Mind and Reclaim What Matters Most. Darren lives with his wife, Brandy, and their 3 daughters in Franklin, Tennessee, and it is a privilege to have this conversation. Darren, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be with you.
This is a new series that we're launching called The Cost of Success, and the premise is to interview fascinating individuals who have built something meaningful and take a journey back to why they built what they built, what they learned along the way, and what it cost them. And I'm excited to explore that with you as someone who leads thousands and thousands of people in their spiritual journey, not to mention the leadership you must deploy with the team to execute on this at a high level and continue to grow. But before we jump in, let's, on the more personal warming up side of things, what's on Darren's mind these days as we approach the end of 2025 that excites you? You know, we're constantly bombarded with scary things, and I'm just curious from your perspective, what as you look out to 2026, what excites you personally?
Well, you know, as a person of faith and as a pastor, I'm seeing something new is happening in Gen Z regarding church, regarding engaging the Bible, and general interest in faith. And I've not seen this before in my lifetime. There is an uptick. Bible sales have increased by 40% in these last 40 in these last couple of years. It seems to me that the secular humanist experiment has collapsed on itself for so many people. And there's a lot of people who are realizing that the way that they're living their lives, being addicted to technology, smartphones, doom scrolling, it's producing a level of anxiety and a level of discontentment. And so there is this re-interest in some of the ancient texts. It's like, is there wisdom from not 10 years ago, but 2,000 years ago? And so there's like this fresh appetite for the supernatural, for the spiritual. Yeah. And it's very exciting to me because this is not something that we're manufacturing, or this is not something that we're even leading. This is something that we're responding to. And as a pastor, as a spiritual leader, as a shepherd of people, it's very, very exciting to see an emerging generation of particularly men, young men, an emerging generation of young men with a growing spiritual appetite, and we get to respond to that.
I wasn't expecting that, and that is awesome.
Yeah.
As a father of two boys, I have an almost 16-year-old who has a ferocious appetite for the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And his own personal faith journey that is all internally derived. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's start from the very beginning. You're clearly not from Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Walk us through young Darren, let's call it the teenage years to 20. What were you up to? What were you interested in? What did you see yourself pursuing as a young man? And how did you ultimately come to America?
Yeah. So I grew up in a very small town on the bottom end of the mainland of Australia. It was about 20,000 people, and was raised in a small country Baptist church of about 100 people. My parents were devout in their commitment to the Lord, to the church. They volunteered any time the doors were open at the church. They really modeled that for me. I'm the oldest of three boys, and we all developed a strong faith at a young age. I was way into sport. Being in a small town, just playing sport is all you do, really. Mm-hmm. So, but a lot of Australian sports, I played cricket and Aussie rules football. Also played tennis and field hockey and
proper soccer,
actual soccer. Yeah. So, that's what we did in a small town. When I graduated from high school, I moved to the nearest largest city of Adelaide. It's about 1 million people. And that's when I had this real opportunity to make faith my own. I had a level of autonomy and agency to either prioritize my faith or not. And for the first year or so, church was not really an important part of my life. And then someone invited me to a church when I was about 19. Mm-hmm. And that was what I can really describe as a spiritual awakening experience for me. I encountered a group of younger people with a level of spiritual vitality that I'd never seen before. I'd never seen young people have such a passion for the things of God. And it was absolutely enthralling to me. It just sort of raised the bar. It gave me a different vision of what it would look like to be a young person of faith where my faith was the most important thing to me. So I was 19 then. I started working at a Christian radio station, and I was working in radio. I was mainly selling radio advertising.
Okay.
And I visited America because America has a much more developed radio scene, particularly Christian radio.
What year was this?
This is in 1998.
Uh-huh.
So I met a family who work in the Christian music industry, who were Aussies, and I met them in Washington, D.C., and they lived here in Nashville. And about 6 months later, I looked into the possibility of getting a job working in radio in Nashville. There's a radio station called Way FM. And what happened was I applied for a work permit in the American consulate office in Melbourne, in Australia. And I asked to get a business visa to be able to come over and work in business and work in radio. Well, the INS officer who was reading my file misunderstood my file and really made an administrative error. And they gave me a visa that I wasn't qualified for, and they gave me a visa that I didn't ask for. They gave me a pastor's visa. And I had never been a pastor, and I had no plans of ever becoming a pastor. But I got a pastor's visa. Apparently, they sort of saw Christian radio, and so they gave me a religious worker's visa. The only way I could come and stay in America is if I became a pastor.
Oh my gosh.
That is how I became a pastor. I know it sounds very serendipitous. People say to me, how did the Lord call you into the ministry? I say the U.S. government called me into this.
Oh my gosh.
So out of fear of deportation, I just keep preaching every single week.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Don't stop now.
Don't stop. That is the actual truth of how I started working in vocational ministry.
So prior to that, it hadn't even crossed your mind?
It did cross my mind. I was a young man who was passionate about the Lord, but I did not think that was what I was
wasn't
going to
the
do in my
direction
life.
you
No,
were
it
heading.
was not the direction of my life at all. No.
So you're sitting there. Did you know it before you got the visa, or did you realize it once you got the visa and you're like, hey, everybody, this says pastor?
I didn't completely understand what had happened immediately. All I knew is that I got a classification. It's called an R1. It is the same visa that the Taliban used on the attack in the World Trade Center. So it's prior to 2001. So they used to hand them out a little more recklessly than they do now. But I didn't quite understand. When I got to America, I was talking to my immigration attorney, and he was basically like, yeah, this is a pastor's visa. And you need to, if you want to stay on this visa, you've got to work in ministry. So
it didn't even dawn on you until you got here.
Till I got here that
that's what that means.
That's what that means. Yeah.
Because you got here thinking, I'm going to go do radio.
Correct. Yeah.
And the attorney says, actually, you can do that for like 5 more seconds. But if you
right. if you want to stay.
Yeah. If this is a long-term thing, you
Yes.
have to somehow work under this permit.
That's right.
So what did you do next?
So I ended up living with the family that I met who were in the music industry. And I started attending the church that they went to.
Mm-hmm.
And the church that they went to, the youth pastor offered me a paid internship.
Okay.
And that's how I began. And the youth pastor, after about a year, found another job, resigned and moved on. And they offered me the job of leading the whole student ministry at this church.
Were you enjoying it at this time? Did you find something that you really enjoyed?
I was loving it. And I was surprised by that because I thought, man, why would I have come to America to work in church ministry? I could have done that in Australia. You know? And so it was a surprise to me, but honestly, it was like discovering my voice. It was like discovering who I am. And I was working with middle school and high school students and watching, just like you were talking about your son, watching the light come on in their hearts, watching them get caught with a vision of using their life to be following God and finding his calling on their life. It was the most enthralling thing. And I just was captivated by it and have been ever since, honestly.
So I'm hearing you, and so much of it is resonating with kind of aspects of my journey into medicine. In hindsight, it makes total sense, but in the moment, for me, it was unexpected and surprising, yet familiar. Mm-hmm. Did it feel something like that? Yeah,
well, certainly. I also felt when I started preaching, I felt like God had gifted me to do this. Like it came naturally to me, you know, like I'd not been to seminary at the time. And so I'd not been trained. And yet somehow there was like this intuition. I found the Bible really interesting and really fascinating myself. And when I tried to translate that to teenagers, their parents would come to me and say, I can't get them to sit still and listen to anything except when you speak. They all listen and they all come home and tell us about it.
So it became very evident to you that there was something special about you in this space of ministry. It
felt like I was cooperating with the design that God had made for me.
Which, had you felt that prior to that?
No. I'd worked in sales and I had worked in radio, and so I'd done a number of different things.
But even being raised in a church, you hadn't had this experience.
No.
Where you were fully engaged and fully participating in this thing that felt very new but natural.
Yeah, it's all of a sudden felt like, oh, this is what I was built for. And I find that I'm so grateful that at the age of 23, I discovered that. Because I watch sometimes some people live their lives and they're still trying to work out what they're going to do when they grow up and they're in their 50s, you know? And when I was 23, I all of a sudden felt like, oh, this is the design. This is the calling. This is the way that God has wired me. And when I do this, I feel his favor on it.
Do you find in your experience now, fast forwarding now to now, reflecting back, is that a necessary experience in one's development in life? Or is it a nice to have, this discovery, this revelation of one's calling?
Yeah.
If you will.
Certainly not everyone gets it.
Yeah.
But I would tell you that I want it for everyone because it's like a convergence, right? It's a convergence of your giftings, your natural giftings. It's also what you're passionate about. And then it's like an opportunity. It's like a door that opens for you. When those three things converge, you find your calling.
Yeah.
Not everyone has the privilege of that happening, but I want everyone to have that experience.
Do you think it's something that if someone's listening to this and the desire to have that experience resonates with them, but they have yet to have had it, is it worth pursuing? Or is there a point where you just say, if it happens, it happens? How would you, if I was coming to you, say, Darren, I've never felt that before, but I want that more than anything. How do I find that?
As a person of faith, I would encourage people to pray for that and pray that God gives them eyes to see and ears to hear, that they would pay attention to the right things. Self-awareness is understanding what your gifts are. I think you can go on a journey of self-awareness. Sure. You can do assessments that help you understand your unique wiring and your gift mix. Asking yourself the questions, what am I passionate about? Paying attention to when your heart beats a little faster about something, when you learn of a need or you learn of some sort of opportunity and there's a surge of energy that is inside of you, paying attention to that. And then looking around and just kind of saying, who are the people that I've met? What are the doors that have opened? What are the opportunities that are surrounding me? I definitely think that you can have an intentionality about trying to understand what that is. A lot of people don't look at their job or their life through the lens of a calling. Yeah. And I would certainly encourage people to try to do that.
Yeah, I think I love that perspective. My feeling on this has always been the first step is realizing there is something called a calling. And that there is a treasure out there that people of faith would call a calling.
Yes.
And that treasure, it exists. And that's part one of finding your calling, is believing there is one. But I often find that the next element is missing often in those that don't have it. And yeah, I believe that there is one, but I'm not sure it'll be worth it. You got to believe the treasure's worth it.
Yes.
And as someone who also feels like he's working in his calling, I at this point at 51 and rising, I can't imagine a universe where I don't get to be in this space where every day is a gift and I'm fully engaged and I'm fully present and I'm fully grateful.
Yeah.
Because I recognize how rare it is. I think that's such a good thing to kind of call out in the middle of your story. So you're 23, you're having this I'm in my calling moment. Where is your headspace in terms of what do you want the rest of your 20s to be at that moment where you're really kind of all in on this?
Yeah, well, I've never really been a long-term plan kind of guy. I've never really had like these, 30 years from now, I want to be in a certain place. My life, since I've moved to America, certainly has been a collection of unexpected doors opening. And if I'm trying to mine the themes of my life, I've been a person of risk, and I've been a person who's recognized doors that have opened. That's probably some of the big themes. But I've had some pretty, I feel like Forrest Gump sometimes, I've just met some incredible people, got to work on amazing things. Really early on, sort of a turning point in my life was in 2001. I'm a big Christian music fan. I grew up listening to Christian music. And because I was a youth pastor in Nashville, we had a lot of proximity to the Christian music industry. And one day a parent came up to me and said, "Hi, I'm Michael Smith." And I said, "No, you're Michael W. Smith." And we became friends. He was a parent. His son Ryan was attending our youth group at the time. And about a year later, he calls me and he says, "Hey, Ryan gave me your phone number. I hope that's okay. But I've got this project coming up. I'm doing a worship record, and I've never done a worship record before. But it's going to be live. We're going to record it in Lakeland, Florida. It's going to be in front of 9,000 people. I want you to be a part of it." I'd only lived in America for 2.5 years at this point. I'm meeting, honestly, one of my heroes. And now he's inviting me to be a part of this project. So I end up flying to Lakeland, Florida with him on this particular day. And in this project, it became the biggest selling record of his career. He had this song called "Let It Rain." Beautiful song. And the whole plan was, in the middle of this song, he said, "I want you to come out and I want you to read scripture or pray or do something." So that was about as much direction as he gave me. And on the night, in the middle of this song, he looks up from the piano. I walk out on stage and I read Psalm 97 and then I pray. And it's one of the most definitive moments of my life.
Wow.
And it became like this, big moment in the evening. That record sold 2 million copies. It came out on 9/11/2001.
Oh my gosh.
And I ended up going on tour with Michael, and I met all these amazing people. And that little moment is a thread that has connected so many different pieces of my life. I ultimately ended up being offered an opportunity to join the staff of a church in Chicago, leading the college ministry. It's called Willow Creek. It's a church of 30,000 people.
So big church.
Big church, and certainly at the time, arguably the most influential church in America. And so, and they only knew about me because I was the voice on this record on Michael W. Smith's album. So it was sort of like this little thread that connected so many things. And I ended up living in Chicago for 8 years and really learned how to lead a church that had scaled, a church of, thousands of people and handling millions of dollars from a resource management standpoint, having staff teams of hundreds of people. That's where I learned to do all of that. And it was one of the most crucial, most formative parts of my development. That all happened during my 30s.
And you were doing youth at that time?
I was doing college ministry.
College.
Yeah.
And were you with Brandy at this point?
So we got married in 2002. She's a Nashville girl.
Okay.
And so we did not have any children. We'd been married for about a year, maybe a year and a half, when this Chicago church reached out to me. And she did not want to move to Chicago. She did not want to leave Nashville. All her family's from here. She's a 7th generation Tennessean.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, if my wife agrees to this, that is an act of God. And she did. And we moved, and we had our children in Chicago. We have three daughters, all teenagers now. And then we moved back to the Nashville area in 2012.
So what's the math on that? You were in Chicago how long?
8 years.
8 years. doing college ministry.
College ministry. Well, I started in college ministry, and then I ended up being elevated to basically being the preacher to the adults.
Got it.
So
like a senior teaching pastor.
Yeah. So I was a teaching pastor, and the senior pastor was a guy named Bill Hybels, and he and I shared the teaching responsibilities.
And this is where you probably got exposure to the playbook of leadership, of how to do it well. How I mean, there aren't a lot of churches that are that. There aren't many that many organizations that can get that big and remain healthy and not break.
Yes.
And I'm sure that was incredibly valuable, considering where you are now in terms of experience. Were you part of the leadership team then?
I was, I was part of the senior leadership team. I mean, I had a front
So you were
row
in those
seat.
rooms when they're making decisions and they're discussing budgetary things and they're dealing with issues that come up with big organizations and hiring and firing and training and volunteers and like all the staff.
100%.
All
Yeah.
of those things.
You're
cutting your teeth.
I'm cutting my teeth on how a 30,000 person church is run. And
there aren't too many of those environments to get that experience.
That's right.
What percentage of churches do you think are that big in America?
Oh, there's not many. At that size, there's probably 4 that are that big.
Like 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
Not percent, 4 total.
4 total.
Wow.
There's a lot of mega church. A mega church is defined as 2,000 people or more.
Okay.
There's a lot
1,000
of those. Yeah. But churches that sometimes they call them a giga church.
I haven't heard that term.
So and that's a church of 10,000 or more. And there'd be probably 50 churches that are that size.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're in Chicago. You're on the leadership team. What's the transition back to Nashville? What prompts that move? Since it probably wasn't part of the plan, right. you were just in the moment. Mm-hmm. What brings you to the dinner table? Hey, Brandy, I think we ought to go back to Nashville. Was there an opportunity? Was it a conviction? Was it a challenge?
Yeah, so I was in my late 30s, and I was in discussion with the senior pastor about taking over the leadership of that church
in Chicago.
Oh, yeah. And so I was kind of, in one sense, being groomed to step in to do that. But I wanted to make sure that I was going to, like, I was ready to lead. You know, I was in my late 30s and I just sort of had this fire in my bones that I'm wired to lead something. And so I had this growing discontentment that I was not able to lead in the role that I was in. And so he and I were having these discussions, and he was saying, you know, I'm going to be looking to transition 3 to 5 years from now. A year later, we were talking again. He said, I'm looking to transition 3 to 5 years from now. A year later, we're talking again. He said, I think I'm looking to transition, 3 to 5 years from now. And
he's not ready.
No, he's not ready. He's not ready. And that's okay. I did not feel entitled to it. I didn't feel like I'm trying to push him out. I like, this is his life work. This is what he's built. He can stay as long as he wants. But there was this discontentment in me, like, it's time to put my big boy pants on and go and lead something.
That's an interesting tension for you, because you go from fully embracing this calling and leaning into it and growing, and then recognizing, I have to continue to grow in this for me. Like, this is more than just my calling is a great place to start. But what I find in my own life and others who have their calling is, once they're in it, we want to notice progress.
Right.
We want to keep growing and expanding and increasing our capabilities. And it sounds like you started to bump up against what was more and more appearing like, maybe I need to grow and develop somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, and when I try to read the story of my life, I really discovered my calling in my 20s, and I really started exercising that calling. Really felt God's blessing on it. In my 30s, I went to Chicago and I learned how to lead an organization, staff, teams, HR, best practices, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, a church is essentially an NGO. It's a nonprofit. And I learned how to lead something at scale. That was my 30s. As I was getting to the end of my 30s, I'm about to begin a new decade in my 40s. And it's like, it's time for me to get in the game. And I just had this discontentment where I am willing to leave what a lot of people would have perceived as like kind of the dream job at the dream place.
But this is your element of risk.
Then it's my element of risk. Right. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So my discontentment grew higher than my adverse risk, my hesitance to risk. And I just had to do it. And I was at a camp or a retreat with my wife in another state, and I was feeling this growing discontentment. And I was sitting in a group of people that didn't know me, and we were just having this discussion about transitions and risk taking and all that kind of stuff. And I said at one point, I said, I want to take this risk, but I'm a little afraid. And this guy said, "What are you afraid of?" And I said, "I'm afraid I will not be able to provide for my family." And he looked at me and he said, "Do you think it's you who provides for your family now?" And it was just like this moment of like God speaking to me and saying, like, if I'm calling you to do something, risk and follow me.
Yeah.
And that was a moment where I decided we're gonna do this. And so I left that church, left really well, love those people, but it was time to go start something.
So you resigned.
Did
you have something else lined up?
Had nothing else
resigned
lined
and
up.
we're going to relocate.
Yeah.
You felt coming back to Nashville was the move.
Yeah. Well, in 2012, this was the number 2 city in America that millennials were moving to. And millennials, again, going back nearly 15 years ago, were the most unchurched generation. And so I was feeling uniquely called to try to reach this generation. They were emerging in their 20s, getting out of college, and Nashville was the city they were all coming to.
So in your 30s, when you were just to kind of close the loop on your education, is in your 30s? Is that when you did your graduate work in your seminary?
So I did my master's degree I did in my 30s, and my doctoral work I did in my 40s.
Got it. So we hadn't got to your doctoral work.
Correct.
So you moved to Nashville, and where do you land? What's the next move for you?
So we moved to Nashville. We moved to just outside of Nashville, Franklin, and we decide that we're going to plant 2 churches on the same day. We're going to plant.
Is that generally recommended?
I don't know of anyone else who's ever done it.
Okay.
But which kind of appeals to me a little bit as well.
The unique risk
taker.
taker.
It's just sort of unique, you know. So we planted in the morning in East Nashville, which was a diverse, lower socioeconomic community, and then we planted also in Franklin, which was a wealthier community. So we planted in a poor community and a wealthy community. And what we did is we got 2 venues. We're meeting in a school, and then we're meeting in a YMCA. And we bought 1 set of chairs. We bought a video projector and a screen, and we got a stage, and we loaded it in East Nashville. And we did a service. Then we tear it all down, put it in the back of a truck, drive across town, reset it up.
Oh my gosh.
And then do it in the evening for Franklin. And we had a launch team in both communities that we'd been working with and praying with and dreaming with. And so we did that for 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
Tearing down and setting up in 2 different places. I had no trouble sleeping at night on Sunday evenings.
Oh, yeah.
But it was exhilarating because we were in 2 really different communities.
Yeah.
And there was a chance for us to be partnering together. And it was just really, really compelling, and it was fresh, and it was kind of a new idea. The name Church of the City was just this idea. I was praying. This is before we moved back to Nashville. I was praying about starting a church called Church of the City, and I looked up online who owns the name churchofthecity.com, and it was owned by some guy in Arkansas, but he wasn't doing anything with it. So I emailed him. I've never met this guy, but I emailed him. And I said, I'm considering starting a church and calling it Church of the City. Would you be interested in selling me this name? He responds and says, look, I'm not doing anything with it, but I want to do something with it in the future. So it's not for sale. if you want to make me an offer, I'll at least consider it, but it's not for sale. I respond, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm sitting in my living room, I'm thinking to myself, all right, how much am I going to offer this guy? $500 feels too little, and $1,000 is too much of my own money. So I'm going to split it down the middle, and I'm going to offer him $750 for this name, churchofthecity.com. So I send this email, and the next morning he says, I need to tell you a story. He says, my wife and I are doing Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University right now, and we're doing the envelope system. And a few weeks ago, my wife was in a store and she had an envelope full of money and she put it down and she forgot about it. And when she came back, it was gone.
Oh my gosh.
And last night was the first time she's been back at that store since. And as she was walking in with our little girl, our daughter, she said, this store cost me a lot of money last time I was here. And the daughter said, maybe we should pray that God would return that money to us. And she said, okay, honey, you should pray for that. And the little girl said, I will. How much money was in the envelope? And the mother said, $750. So this little girl prays that God would send them $750, and he gets my email. Mm-hmm. And he says, I accept your Holy Spirit inspired offer. You are supposed to have this.
My goodness.
That was the very sort of moment oh, we're doing this.
This is not me.
We're doing this.
Yeah, this is happening.
Right.
Okay, so you get the URL. You're 2 years into growing 2 locations. At that point, did you start to build a team? And was the plan to continue to divide and conquer or to establish teams for each location?
Yeah. So over those 2 years, we hired a bunch of people. We had about 15 people on our staff, and we had about 1,000 people coming between our 2 churches.
Wow.
So it was really fun. I mean, we were having the time of our lives. We'd found some better venues. Mm-hmm. We really had a lot of traction, and it was quite exciting. At the 2-year mark, I end up being approached by a church in town. And they had 2 buildings, and their senior pastor had just resigned. And this was the church that I worked at in 1998.
Oh.
And they came to me and they said, our pastor is gone. Would you consider merging our churches together?
Mm.
And I thought, there's no way I want to do this. That sounds really difficult.
Tricky. Yeah.
They had $7 million of debt as well on their property, and it was costing $1 million a year servicing the debt
just to hold it. Yeah.
And our revenue was about $2 million a year at that point, and so that would be 50% of our entire budget would just be servicing the debt of that building. And I just felt a little afraid.
Sure.
And it's funny, I went to see Dave Ramsey. He was a friend, and I'd known him for a long time, and I went and chatted with him, and I thought he would say, stay away from that debt,
Yeah.
So I was explaining it to him, and I said, am I crazy even considering this? He goes, well, the debt is not the reason to not do this. He said, you just need to pay it off as quickly as possible. And so I, through a series of prayer and discernment and seeking wise counsel, we decided that we were going to do this. And about 30 days in to the churches uniting together, I stood up and I said, our church has $7 million of debt. What if we just paid it all off? What if we aggressively, sacrificially, irresponsibly paid this off? We would free up $1 million a year that we could pour into the community. Mm-hmm. So, what happened next was one of the most remarkable things I've ever experienced. And that is no one gave us a big gift. No one gave us $1 million. No one gave us $500,000. The largest gift we got was $200,000. But we ended up having about 1,100 people say, we want to be a part of this.
Oh, wow.
And the average gift was $7,000. And we paid it all off in 13 months.
Whoa.
And it was really remarkable. There was this sense that people were like, we're a part of something really special here. And we freed up $1 million a year, and we do pour that into the community now.
What year is that?
This was in 2015.
Okay. So 2015 to now, it's a 10-year run. You go from, I mean, this is really a remarkable timeline to like watch it in a story format. I was aware of pieces of this, but certainly not in the chronology. So you're newly merged, take on $7 million in debt to debt-free in a very, very short period of time. Over the last 10 years, I mean, in your words, how would you describe the last 10? From that moment of being debt-free with a merged church, which is now the version of the organization that you lead.
Yeah.
How would you describe the growth, the experience, the impact of what you and your team have been building?
Yeah. So what's been crazy about this last 10 years is we've grown by about 1,000 people a year for 10 years. So things certainly changed a little bit in COVID, but we grew. When we came together, we were about 2,000 people, but we grew really fast. That first year, we then were about 3,000 people, and then the next year we were 4,000. So by the time we got to COVID, we were about 6,000 people, and now we're about 10,000 on a Sunday.
Wow.
So it has just been, we've had so many people move to the area, and it's just been, we have a remarkable staff. We have a remarkable group of people. It's just grown really quickly. And what happened is, coming out of COVID, when people were starting to come back to church and all of that, the property that we bought, or the property that we inherited and then paid off the $7 million, is a 50-acre property right in the middle of Franklin. And the land value is about $1 million an acre. So it's a $50 million property, just land value.
Wow.
So we have a building that we got, and we sort of renovated and improved the building. But there was a 25-acre piece of green space on the property, just a big open field. And I remember sitting in my office and looking out there and thinking about, all throughout the story of the Bible, land was the gift that God would give people. Think of promised land. Think about the family that would inherit land or hand land onto their children. The interesting thing about the resource of land is it's not worth anything unless you work the land. And so it requires labor. It requires investment. And I remember looking out at the land, 25 acres of just grass, and I thought, surely we're supposed to do more than just mow this for the next 20 years. Like, what's in the heart of God? Like, what does God want out on this land? So that provoked a listening tour, and we're called Church of the City. And so we decided that we were going to go meet with people who were in leadership positions who were trying to solve the problems of our city. So we got to meet with the governor. We got to meet with the mayor. We got to meet with the chief of police. We got to meet with Department of Children, social workers. We got to just sort of sit down and hear, what could we do to be helpful? The outcome of that listening tour was 5 issues. The first issue was mental health and suicide prevention. Coming out of COVID, suicide was at record high, and mental health was at crisis levels, and still is. Reliable transportation for single moms and single parents was the second key issue. The third was temporary placement for children who were going into state custody and foster care. They couldn't find a home for them, but they needed a temporary home. We learned that a lot of these kids were sleeping in the government office because there was nowhere for them to go. The third was we simply needed more foster families. We needed to recruit, train, and retain foster families, families that would open up their homes to these children in our community. The fifth issue we learned is that there were 1,000 kids every year aging out of the foster care system. The overwhelming majority of boys ended up in prison.
Just locally,
yeah, in the state of Tennessee.
In the state of Tennessee.
The overwhelming majority of boys ended up in prison. The overwhelming majority of girls ended up pregnant before 21. They would have children that they also would end up going into the foster care system.
A vicious cycle.
Yeah. And so we thought, gosh, can we get upstream on some of these issues? So these were the 5 issues. We consulted a number of experts and we said, like, what kind of facility would be able to serve these 5 issues? And that informed what we decided to roll out to our church as a vision called The Village. Takes a village to raise a child. And we designed and prepared this vision to be able to serve these 5 issues. It became a $50 million project. And because we were so committed to paying off the debt when we first joined, we decided that we were going to build this without any debt. So we have no construction loan and we have no line of credit. We're just building this at cash.
Unreal.
And we have raised $50 million. $42 million is in hand. We still, as of the date of recording this, we have $8 million outstanding, but is committed to come in before now and the end of this project, which is going to open in May of 2026.
I'm so glad we had space in this conversation to bring up The Village. It is such a remarkably inspiring project, and I don't think one could really listen to that story about where the heart of this village, what it rests on, and not just see the impact. I mean, truly legacy, community changing effort. It's something to behold.
Let me just say one thing.
Yeah, please.
When Brandy, my wife, and I started dating, she was a government social worker. So she has spent her entire adult life serving and advocating for the marginalized, the vulnerable, and for children, honestly, in the foster care system and in state custody. And so sometimes I joke that The Village is the kind of vision that happens when a youth pastor and a social worker get married. Because it really is, it's come out of her heart. It's come out of her passion. And she has continued to orient the heart and vision of our church towards those in need. And that is the natural proclivity of her heart. And so this $50 million construction project is going to do enormous good, but it's going to be, the trajectory was set by the woman that I married.
What? I'm just reflecting on this conversation we've had so far, and a couple of times you mentioned or alluded to, you're not a long horizon planner. There's an element of your story that can't be decoupled from, I just want to be available and be listening. How much of what, when you look out at the impact your organization is currently having and the things that make you so excited, do you feel were born because you have had this instinct to remain nimble, flexible, open, and not predetermined? So said another way, your lack of a goal allowed you to fully express this vision in a way that is unique and truly a one-of-one and fully is far bigger than I imagine you could ever imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a level of agility when you are able to pivot for the doors that God seems to open. And this is unquestionably a door that God has opened. I often say and often experience that vision comes in seed form. So the vision of The Village was not a fully orbed idea. when we started working on this. It was like, we need to build something out there that has a kingdom purpose that's going to serve people in need. I don't know what it's going to be for. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we're going to start moving forward. Something remarkable happened that gave me the confidence that God was leading us to do this. I've never, I thought the $7 million paying off debt was going to be the most remarkable story that I'll tell for the rest of my life. When I'm an old man, that's the story I'm going to tell. And it turns out that we've raised 50 million since then. I had no idea. And I'd never done anything at this scale before. But what happened is we had a couple that moved from California to Tennessee. I've had a few of those. And they had sold a company. And they took us out to dinner and they said, "What's in your heart for the future of the church?" And I said, "Well, this is a brand new idea. But we want to build something out on this field that is going to serve vulnerable people in our community. It's going to serve single parents, and it's going to serve foster children, maybe help kids get adopted." And they said, "That sounds really exciting." 2 days later, they sent me an email and said, "We want to give you $2.5 million.
Whoa.
I have never had anything happen like this before. So we don't even have a fully developed idea. I've got
But they want to fund the idea.
They want to fund the idea. So I didn't ask for money. I didn't realize that this wasn't a donor dinner. This was like, we were meeting with these folks. So they say they want to give us $2.5 million and they're going to wire it to us. Well, I get up and I tell that story at church, right? And I'm like, you guys aren't going to believe this, but we have just started to pray about this idea of building something out on this big field here that's going to serve vulnerable people. And someone gave us $2.5 million. The next week, I get an email from a family that's just moved from Chicago. And they said, "We want to give you $1 million.
Oh my gosh.
They said, "We have had some money that's been parked in an account and we've been waiting for the right cause to give it to. And when you said that on Sunday, my wife looked at me and said, 'That's it.'" We had $3.5 million, no plan, and I had not asked anyone for money. And honestly, I thought, this is not my idea.
Yeah.
This is God's idea. This is not an idea that I'm having that I'm asking God to bless. This is a vision that God is having that he's asking me to join.
Yeah.
And so we had $3.5 million. Honestly, that gave me the confidence to even attempt something as audacious as this, because I just felt like God was blessing this before we even started.
What a fascinating perspective, because from the outside looking in, it might be easy to say, wow, to have the audacity to go build something like that must take like superhuman courage or risk-taking capacity.
Yeah.
But the truth of this story is you were available and open and flexible, and God created the tailwind that you needed to then have the courage, like almost a platform to step out on and be courageous.
Yes.
And it wasn't derived from you. I have a similar experience in starting a business, and it is very scary. You have to kind of let go of the vine and really trust that there will be sure footing because I'm taking a step, Internally, as a leader of the organization and your leadership team, was there any challenge in disseminating the vision and getting clarity on the vision so that everybody was moving in the right direction, the same direction? Or was there conflict, confusion, resistance? Talked about internally, was there ever any challenges as you being the leader of this team and this organization to say, I want to go this way and here's why? Was there anybody on the team that was like, pump the brakes?
Lots of people on the team. Yeah. And it's funny, I was having this conversation yesterday. We have an elder board And so I am accountable to a team of 9 who oversee me, and they are all volunteers. And they manage and they oversee, they govern how money is spent at our church, and our theology and our vision, and they sort of oversee all of that. So I'm accountable to that group. They can fire me. That's how we sort of keep checks and balances. And I was talking to one of the elders yesterday at a meeting, and I was reminded of something that he said to me, because he said, the kind of 2 kinds of people in the world, you have a vision like this, and one person wants to have every detail worked out ahead of time to ensure that it's going to work. Like, is the concept going to work? The other kind of person is the one that says, I don't know, but we'll work it out. And he said, I'm not the second kind of person. And he said, but you are. And I am. I'm like, there's been lots of things that we have not known, and there still are some things that we don't know. And I am the kind of person that's like, well, when it comes to having to decide that, we will consult the very best minds and we'll get wisdom from people on what we should do. Until then, we're just going to keep moving forward. So I have a high pain threshold for ambiguity. I can carry ambiguity, which you have to do if you're taking something from nothing to something. If it's a one of one, you're not modeling on anything else. It is like, we are creating this from nothing. You have to have a lot of tolerance for ambiguity, because I don't know the answer to a lot of things. And to the people that have a very low tolerance for ambiguity, it's difficult for them, because they're wanting to protect me, to stop me from, running this thing off a cliff or doing something unknowingly that is going to be a disaster or something. So yeah, I had a lot of people that were quite concerned. But what happened, and this has actually been the story of the church in one sense, what happened was we had so many people who believed in this and wanted to support this that it sort of became a self-fulfilling prophecy. After the $3.5 million, we decided that we told that story and we said, all right, I'm actually going to do a fundraising dinner. And I'm going to invite some of the lead donors of our church, some of the higher net worth folks, and give them, obviously, a complete voluntary opportunity to be the early givers on this thing. Would you support this thing? Would you get behind this thing? And I was rehearsing my pitch in the morning in front of my wife. And I was going to ask for $6.5 million out of that room on top of the 3.5. So the total would be 10. So we'd have a goal. So, I'd sort of roll it out to everyone and say, tonight we're going to raise $10 million. And you can do it with a series of pledges over a couple of years. And we already have 3.5 to goal, and we're going to raise 10. And as I was in my living room rehearsing this, I just stopped.